Today we find ourselves at the studio of Celia Lees, a Toronto-based painter who will be showing at Bau-Xi Gallery. We're here today to learn a bit about who she is, a bit about her practice, and thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I'm happy that you're here and we can talk about the work and see it in person. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Excellent. So maybe you could start us off by telling us a bit about your journey, your background and how you became to be an artist.
Yeah. So I would say that my journey really began when I was in school. So I went to school at Ryerson, which is now Toronto Metropolitan, and I took fashion design. So while I was in the course, I was like painting on the side because I wasn't creatively fed by what I was like learning in the course. Like I wanted something else. So I turned to painting and immediately just jumped into abstract because it had like no rules. And I felt like I could really just release the creativity that I wanted to and what I intended to in the program. So yeah, just painted on the side and kind of just started to share things online on social media. And then eventually people like started to express interest in buying stuff, and it kind of just got the ball rolling from there. But after school, I was offered a job in Sweden. So I moved to Stockholm for a year to work in fashion.
Very cool.
COVID happened, lost my job, came back to Canada, and I was living in my hometown in Port Stanley. So I was like, there's literally obviously no fashion industry there. Like, what am I going to do for work? So I just got back into painting. So I just jumped back into it fully. And I was like, I feel like this is like the time to really just like try this and like see what will happen. So yeah, it just took off from there. And that was like 4 years ago today. So been full time ever since.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
That must be really liberating.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought that I would be able to work in art full time. Like it was always something I was like, oh, like, wouldn't that be nice? And now like it does feel surreal that it's happened. I just feel like really grateful that I'm able to do that and like work for myself.
Yeah. I mean, we're in this beautiful studio, just full of light and full of your work. And it must like provide such a great space to come in and create every day.
Yeah, it's definitely inspiring. And I feel like this space, because my process is so fragile to my surroundings, it's really important for me to like curate a space that makes me feel excited and like happy to be in. And having like the light and the high ceilings and stuff, like it really, I feel like has pushed my work to another level. Because the studio that I had originally when I was in Port Stanley, I think was like maybe 200 square feet, like
wow.
150, and the ceiling, like I could reach up and touch it with my hand. So when I got in here and finally I was like, oh, I feel like I can breathe again. And I just like hit the ground running and really started like painting like big and stuff. So
Yeah, well, I think that's a good segue. Maybe you could tell us a bit about your process, like how the work sort of starts and turns into what it is.
yeah, it's very intuitive, the process, and it's based on my life and my lived experiences, and more specifically my emotions. So I really like to lean into how I'm feeling and explore that and try to articulate that by painting on the canvas, because I feel like a lot of the time I like struggle with explaining how I'm feeling, or I can't find the right words. Like I feel like just language is not enough sometimes.
Yeah.
And to be able to release myself onto the canvas in such a personal way is so liberating. So yeah, it's about just being super present in the moment with my artwork and allowing the process to guide itself. So a lot of the time I talk about my process being additive, because it's like I'll put one mark on the canvas, I'll kind of like look at what's going on and then decide like, okay, now I can do this, or this, and then like keep adding on top of each other. And that's just kind of how it like forms. But yeah, predominantly work in large scale, because I really like painting things that are a reflection of like the size of my body. I don't like doing things that are so small because it feels very like tight.
Yeah.
So I just like being like, yeah, working large scale and using my body as like also as a tool in the process.
Do you go into it with an idea of color that you're going to use? Do you sort of think of color as like a signifier to you?
Yeah, I feel like definitely the artwork that I'm making, and specifically the color, is reflective of like my life at the time. like I was going through a very like dark time like a couple years ago, and like everything I made was like black and like red. So it definitely does tell kind of what's going on in my life. But then I also at the same time like to use that as a tool to kind of like show people like what I'm feeling at the time. But yeah, color is super important to me, and in the harmony of color in paintings. And I think that like I really try to focus on that and be intentional with the colors that I'm choosing, because when I have like a palette of color that I have kind of roughly in mind, or like a tone of a painting, it allows me to be more present with the work, because I've already kind of like selected or made like a decision of like the, I guess, way that I want to take the piece. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, because your work is somewhat minimal in certain ways, how do you know when it's finished?
That's such a hard question.
I know it might be unfair, but
and I feel like I get asked that question almost like the most out of any question.
I'm sorry.
No, but it's interesting, because I like to wonder like why it's such a mystery to everybody. My thing is like, oh, could I take anything away, or could I add anything else? And when I get to that point where I'm like, oh, if I added anything else, it would become like too much. And if I like don't need to take anything away, then surely it's like somewhere in the middle of the two.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of the time when I'm like not sure, I just like to step away and like give it a day or something and revisit it the next day, and maybe in different light or different mood or whatever, and kind of like just look at it one more time. And then, yeah, normally at that point we'll know if it's completely finished or not.
Yeah. Another good thing for people to know might be, you know, who are some of your influences?
Yeah, I would say like my like top two would definitely be Franz Klein and then Cy Twombly. Like those are just two that I always like find myself coming back to over time. There's a lot of influences that I have of like contemporary artists now that I see like online that are like just amazing and so inspiring, and I feel like maybe my work relates to them more. But in terms of like the like greats, I would definitely say those two.
Yeah. May I ask why?
Yeah, so Franz Klein, just in terms of like the form that he has on the canvas and the ability to just paint in literally like black and white and have it be such an amazing and strong composition. I feel like when you're painting in black and white, like everything's so obvious and so in front of your face. You can't balance it out with putting like a little bit of orange over here to draw your eye away from it. Like it just is what it is, and it feels very honest to me.
Yeah.
And then in terms of Cy Twombly, I just love like the like fantasticalness about it, and like the lightness and the airiness, but then also there's like this like crypticness to it with like sometimes a little bit of like writing of like a word or a message, but then there's still like these really interesting raw abstract moments where you can tell that like he wasn't scared, like he was just like going into the canvas and letting his body like take over. So that really resonates with me. And of course like his color palettes too are super beautiful, so that always helps.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me by today. I appreciate it.
Of course, yeah.
And we're at the studio of Celia Lees, a Toronto-based painter who will be showing at both our Vancouver and Toronto locations. You'll be able to find the work online. And please like and subscribe to receive future notifications for content.